All right, for the record, this is the first in a series of commemorative events to be held by the Doylestown Historical Society to commemorate the entrance of the United States into the First World War. Uh, I'm here with a couple of gentlemen at the Doylestown Historical Society's offices here on Main Street in Doylestown. If you gents would care to introduce yourselves.
I'm Benjamin R. Schuyler, and my father was Benjamin Schuyler. I've lived in Doylestown. I was born in Doylestown, and I have been in the Navy twice, and have worked in Doylestown Post Office and wound up as the superintendent of mails in Warrington Post Office.
My name is David E. Windholz. My father, was David J. I was born here in 1929 in Doylestown. Was in the Air Force 49 to 52, and that's about it.
And what did you do here in Doylestown after you got out of the Air Force?
I bought an old business and I started a sporting goods store, which I still have after 62 years.
Well, considering what happened down there at Gander Mountain, down in Warrington, that's pretty commendable that you're still in business. I
Yeah.
understand they have gone under.
Yeah.
Okay, Ben, let's start with you. You have both your father and two of your uncles served in the First World War. Let's
Right.
talk about your dad. Can you tell us a little bit about his service?
Well, he was married. He was married when he went in the service, and he went overseas, and he was wounded on October the 5th, 1917, and he was wounded in the leg, and I have a letter from him that he wrote to my mother when he was on the front, and he said, the Germans are keeping us pretty busy up here now, but he said, hopefully we'll be home soon. And then that was the end of that part of the letter, and he wrote another letter 5 days later. They took about 3 days till they got to him, and he wrote in this part of the letter that I have a little hole in my ankle, but nothing serious, don't worry about it. And so he was more worried about the folks at home than him. And later on, do you want me to go further? Later on, he told me that at the aid station, they would put a gauze in one side and out the other with alcohol in and seesaw it to keep from getting gangrene. However, gangrene did set in, and he was sent to a hospital in France where they removed his leg, and then from there they sent him back to the States in a Veterans Hospital in Maryland to recuperate.
Now, he came back an incomplete man. Can you talk about how it was growing up with a father who was war wounded and disabled?
He never let it bother him. He would strap his wooden leg on, and it weighed approximately 25 pounds. He would put two stump socks on, then put the leg on and strap it to real tight up around his loin. And he became a mechanic, and well, we never knew any different. That we knew he had a leg off, and he was very active, and he could ride bikes with us, and he was just a good common ordinary man.
So it was he coped well and
He
was
never wanted any thing to do extra for him. So us kids, well, Bet and I used to have to mow the grass and things like that. But other than that, well, uh, he was just a normal, good fellow.
Your dad was Private First Class David Windholz.
David J.
David J. Uh, and he was in the 79th Division, correct?
Right.
Yeah. And what did he do? What did he tell you about the war?
Not very much, but he was in the 311th Machine Gun Battalion, and the only thing he ever told me that he was in the Argonne Forest too, also, and he never mentioned much else. He's pretty quiet.
Did he maintain contact with any of his buddies from the war?
Yeah, he joined the American Legion when they were formed in Doylestown. It was 1919, I think, or 1920. And he was very active in that for 60-some years. He always helped at the turkey dinners they used to have. He was a big help there. And they went to, they had, every year they went to, I guess it's Menlo Park in Percy. One of the places they used to go on picnics, the whole group.
The Legion.
It wasn't the Legion, it was the 311th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The veterans group.
Yeah. And they'd have a big, with the wives and kids and everything. It was a big thing.
And you both had uncles who served. Ben, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Well, I had Uncle Howard, who they called Chunk. After my dad went in the service, he joined the Company G up here in Doylestown, and then he was drafted. And in the same year my father was wounded, he was gassed. And he was within the hospital for, I think, 2 or 3 months. And then he became a runner for the company. He'd take messages from here to there. And the other uncle was Uncle Chess, they called him Pipe. He lost a finger, and he was in the Argonne Forest and lost a finger. I don't know how he lost it, but he was wounded. So my grandmother sent 3 boys, and all 3 of them suffered a wound. None of them never wanted to talk about anything about it.
And your uncle,
Uncle Harry.
yeah, was I think, rather colorful fellow, as I read the history.
Yeah, he was, he joined in New York City, but he lived in Rochester, New York. He was working for Kodak. They had the big place up there. And my dad, during the Second World War, he worked in Philadelphia in a mill that made parachute cord for jumpers. My dad, the only thing I can remember him saying one time was how bad it was. That war was fought mostly in trenches, big long trenches, and he said that was the worst because he said you were down in this trench and rain or snow or a foot of water, you still had to be down in this trench. And he said the men got sick of all kinds of things, just being exposed, wet half the time, cold. And that was, I think, besides the fatalities, he didn't, thought that was the worst part.
Your dad, particularly Ben, would have in today's structure been eligible for Veterans Administration support. Did he get anything from the government?
Yeah, he got a $50 a month pension, and when the Depression came, it seemed, well, my sister can verify it, it seemed like we always had somebody living in our house because some of the relatives would be out of work, and he had money coming in, and he had the garage, so they would come live with us till they found another job. But we always wondered, Betty and I always wondered where we all slept.
How about your dad and your uncles, or your uncle? Did they get any government benefits after the war?
Not that I know of, no. He was wounded, I think, once, not very bad. So I don't recall that he got anything. No.
And back in those days, you didn't get a Purple Heart. They didn't have
That's
such
right,
a thing as a
Purple
Purple
Heart.
Heart and anything, so all three of them got no decorations, and I guess your father's same way.
Yeah, couple ribbons or something.
He didn't even get the ribbons. He just wanted out.
Well, your dad, of course, would have been released from a military hospital. Was he down in Walter Reed? Did I read that?
I think it was.
Yeah, I know he flipped around in several hospitals after they
Yeah.
brought him back to the States. So he would not have been demobilized with the rest of the guys in his unit.
Yeah.
Your dad was, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, so they probably would have made sure that he got the various trinkets and pieces of ribbon.
Yeah. And my uncle Harry, he came back with a French girl, and they were married.
Well, what other memories do either of you have about, you've talked about getting together with fellow veterans. Is there anything that you'd like to share with the rest of us on what happened? What stories might have been told?
I know when I came home on leave, my father was working at Lacey Park in the pumping station and with my uncle. And when I would come home at night, I would stop in and see him. And one thing he told me, he said, when it's all over, get your education. So I went back to high school and got my high school diploma and went on to business school.
Okay.
I just don't, he never talked about it. Very, very seldom.
Well, that is something that is not uncommon.
Right.
I will tell you, my father was in the Second World War, and I don't think he told me any real substantial stories until probably until I was already back in the Army myself, and we could then relate to one another. But where were your fathers living in Doylestown when you were born?
My father was living on, they had the house at 341 South Main Street in Doylestown,
And you were born in what year?
1926.
26. Okay. And Dave, you were
We
born
lived in Doylestown,
you were born 1929.
29 January.
Okay. In Abington Hospital, which
Abington Hospital,
Yes.
yeah.
something unusual for the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My grandfather started Beulah Cemetery, and our family still has stock in Beulah Cemetery, and it's been passed down from my father to me, to my sons, and from my uncles to their kids, and all the way down. So they have a meeting once a year, and Uncle Howard's granddaughter is president. Let's see, Edna, one of Uncle Howard's daughters, is the vice president. Her son is vice president, and Gary, my son, is secretary.
And Beulah Cemetery, for someone geographically challenged like myself, is where?
Over in New Britain, right off of Beulah Road, I guess it is. Yeah.
Okay. Is that cemetery associated with your church, or is it just a community cemetery?
I think it's just a community cemetery, and it's owned by, like I say, there's shares that are out, and they have a meeting once a year and elect officers and transact business.
Well, while I brought up the subject of churches, what church was your family associated with when you were growing
New
up?
Britain Baptist Church. Our family Bible is from Benjamin. That's my grandfather's great-grandfather. The Bible was presented to him. It's a big thing by the New Britain Baptist Church.
He was a lay leader in the church?
I don't know what he was. All I know is we inherited the family Bible.
Okay. Okay. And what about your family?
Salem Reformed Church.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The plaque.
Right.
Picture of it. The names.
My father and two uncles belonged to the Salem Reformed Church, and it's now called the
UCC.
Salem United Church.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, if no one else here has anything, I would like to publicly thank you gentlemen for your time, and through you, your fathers and uncles for their service. We hope that this will transmit a little bit of understanding to the folks who look at it about Doylestown's part in the First World War and the lives of some of the people who are associated with it. Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.